The information presented in this NCHE project is gathered from trusted sources, personal stories, and individuals' recollections. We have made every effort to ensure its accuracy. However, due to the nature of the content and the methods of obtaining it, some details may not be entirely precise or exact. We appreciate your understanding and encourage you to consider this context as you watch our presentations. Enjoy.
Currently, Monhegan has a small grocery store that is opened year-round for island residents and is booming in the summer with tourists eager to purchase food, beverages, and other basic necessities. The store has been in various different buildings on the island. In the 1930s, there were 3 different grocery stores simultaneously operating on the island.
What is your name?
My name is Lisa Brackett. I remember the general store, which was first called the North End Market, and Katie Bogle used to own that, and her family, Wolfie and Dave, and I worked in there as well, and then I started frying donuts for them, and that's how that all started. And then when she sold it, Tara Heyer started running a business out of there in conjunction to her business, the Carina, which was another grocery store that Billy Payne owned. And eventually, that part of the Carina wasn't really working out that much, so we needed another grocery store because the Carina was going to close. And so then I bought the grocery store with the help of the community, which held a big fundraiser, and the artists all donated art, and we had a street dance, and my friend Steve Cuniff helped organize all that, and we got enough money so that I could purchase the business. And the building was actually bought by Miska at the time. So I rented the building from Miska and ran a grocery store for 8 years. Miska is Monhegan Island Sustainable Community Association, and what they do is they buy properties out here and or land and resell it for affordable housing so that people can afford to live out here year-round. And that's what helped me get the grocery store, because they gave me a very, very inexpensive rent, and I was able to stay there.
What is your full name?
My full name is Maura Conley. So my husband and I are the co-owners of the Monhegan store, and we also rent the store building from Miska, who owns the building. So we do a little bit of everything. But I could tell you the store, we changed the name back to being Monhegan Store because it was not for the last, I know Lisa had it L. Brackett and Son, and then before Lisa, it was at one point North End Pizza, but I think they also changed it to Monhegan Store.
How did you get to own or rent the buildings you have now?
So the store specifically, I used to be the treasurer for Miska, so I was at all of the meetings. And one meeting I went to, Lisa came to it as the owner of the store then, of L. Brackett and Son, and she said that she was stepping back, and me and Jacob were looking for something to be our career. So we thought about it, and then we just pursued it, and we really came up with a business plan, and we were not the only people who wanted to own the store, but we ended up with it, and we were really happy. And it was Lisa's decision, and then it also went to Miska to approve. So now we have our lease with Miska, and they mandate in our lease that it is a year-round store. So we have a really low rent, but it has to be a year-round grocery store. The store, so we bought it from Lisa, or we bought the equipment from Lisa in 2020, and then she had the store for 7 years, I believe, and before that it was owned by Katie Bogle, who had it initially as North End Pizza, and then she transitioned it to this store, and she is the one who sold the property to Miska also. She outright owned the store. And then before her, the store, there was, I believe, a few years where the store didn't exist. And there was also the Carina grocery store in the Carina, which a few different people owned. Tara owned it, and Billy Payne owned it, and that's where Ray started working for the store. Ray still works at the store, and he's 80 years old. And he still trucks for us. So before the Carina, there was the Monhegan store. I think it was Jack Bell owned it. I've met his daughter. And then he's the one where he couldn't find someone to take it over at the Black Duck building, which is when Barbara got the Black Duck into that space because no one wanted to run a store there. And before him, there was the Murdochs. It was John and Winnie's, or John's parents ran the store. And I believe before them it was the Odoms.
Well, we came in 2014. So one thing that's changed is that Jake and Maura bought the store. Lisa Brackett used to run it. And so that's been a nice change too for them.
It's nice to be part of something that I know has been part of the community for so long.
Over the years, numerous grocers have competed for business on Monhegan. Jacob Horn ran the first in late 1700s on Fish Beach. And by the 1880s, both Daniel M. Davis and Gilman Roberts were operating stores. Davis's was in a building on the site of the current Carina Market, and Roberts was across the road from the current Monhegan store. In the winter, these stores were the social centers of the island community. In the early 1900s, Mr. and Mrs. Neil Kennedy ran a store on Swim Beach. Rodney Lane and then his son Frank ran the former Roberts store until around 1908, when he died unexpectedly. Lane's store was turned over to Edward L. Porter of Boothbay. Sometime after 1913, Stanford Sterling built a store on the site of the current post office in Black Duck Emporium. After ownership of the Monhegan store, as it was called, passed in 1920 to Hildane and then to Adriel Bird, Sid Odom took it over in 1930. In the 1930s, there were 3 grocery stores operating on Monhegan. The Monhegan store, Uncle Henry's on Wharf Hill, and a store run by Elva Brackett, who was also the postmistress in a building on the site of the former D.M. Davis store. By 1940, the Monhegan store was so successful that it became the only store.
The first ever truck on Monhegan was a Model T Ford, pictured here on Wharf Hill Road, and was owned by Raymond J. Chadwick, who ran the Monhegan store.
Charlie Dyer, Harry Odom, and Doug Odom in the Monhegan store, late 1940s. Retired lightkeeper Charles Dyer purchases a bottle of Poland spring water from the Odom brothers. Doug and Harry are still wearing their Army issue shirts. Doug and Harry Odom were born and raised in Quincy, Massachusetts. When Doug was 17 and Harry 15, they began spending summers on Monhegan, helping their older brother, Sidney, run the Monhegan store. Doug was the first person drafted for Monhegan while waiting to be called up. He worked as a crane operator at Bethlehem Steel in Quincy, Massachusetts. While in Quincy, he helped to build the battleship Massachusetts, machinist mate first class. He saw combat both in the Pacific and in Africa. Harry joined the Army in April 1942. He was wounded during the D-Day invasion of Normandy. After recuperating, he returned to the front and was captured. After 8 months in Germany captivity, Harry escaped and walked across Poland and into Russia before finding a ship to take him back to American-held territory. For his service, Harry received numerous awards, and decorations. After the war, Harry returned to the island to live year-round. He convinced his brother Doug to return with him. While they had been fighting, the store had gone into debt. They thought they'd run the store and get out of debt, and then go their separate ways on the mainland. Their nephew Ben Odom says, by the time they got out of debt, they were sort of captured by the island. In 1946, Harry and his brother Doug bought their first lobster boat, Julia H. They began fishing together. Their final boat, Chris, was named for their good friend, Chris Nicholson. They lobstered and ran the same store together until 1979, when they sold it and built a house next door. The brothers lived on the island until 2002. Basil Day, Tom Orne, Mrs. Richard Bird, George Green, Harry Odom, and Jay Conaway on porch of Monhegan store. The Odom store became an important part of the social fabric of the island after Doug and Harry returned from the war. The front door was opened from early morning until 10 or so in the evening, and the store proper became a favorite gathering place both summer and winter, despite the lack of a pot-bellied stove. But there was a pickle barrel, a cooler with soft drinks for sipping while they munched crackers and candy and swapped stories. Ashley Alta, The Monhegan Store, January 1984.